This is the Succeed in Business podcast. The podcast is inspired by a book titled Succeed in Business, Learn from Your Business Failures and Succeed. The book shares practical information on how to find inspiration in humble beginnings to become a successful entrepreneur. Through this book, you will learn that starting small is always the best way, and if you fail, you are equipped enough to start again. It also provides nuggets at the end that you need to read daily to know how to navigate challenges in your small business. If you want to get a copy of the book, contact Mpho Nenweli at 082 567 3099 on WhatsApp and on email mpho@anisa.co.za. The book costs 259 rands including courier.
Hello everyone, this is Mpho Nenweli and this is the Succeed in Business podcast. This podcast will bring the best in you. Know that failure is inspiration and your success is within reach. Do not give up. In today's episode, I'll be focusing on the issues on how to avoid failure in your small business. The episode will focus on key questions that you need to ask yourself in order to succeed or to make sure that you plan appropriately and avoid failure. I'll also look at the causes of failure in a small business, how to avoid failure, and also what are the key things to look at for success. To start with, you need to know and ask yourself particular questions that will help you clear your mind in terms of your business venture. These questions are very important because they will enable you to clear your mind, to identify areas of concern and ensure that you plan for success and minimize failure. The first thing that you need to ask yourself is there a market for the goods and services that you want to provide? Are you bringing something unique into the market that doesn't exist in terms of goods and services? Then you also need to know who is the ideal customer for your goods and services. And you must also not forget to have a thorough assessment of the potential competitors for the same goods and services that your business will be offering. And you also have to think deeply on how you are going to price your goods and services in order to compete and also attract customers. You will also have to understand how are you going to market your business in order to generate sales for the goods and services that you'll be offering in the market. You also have to look at the issue of funding. How are you going to get the business funded? Is it from your own pocket, or are you going to raise funds from friends and relatives? And in that case, you might need to come up with a business plan to be able to run the numbers and convince them that you've got a viable business on the table that they can put their lives on. You will also have to determine what resources are you going to need. Are you going to need an office? Are you going to need an assistant? Are you going to need machinery if you're going to manufacturing? Are you going to need raw materials? You need to be very clear and interrogate the things that you need in terms of resources. And also the other thing is, do you have the time and the drive to run the business? And be patient enough until the business can make you a living. These are some of the key questions that you need to ask yourself to help clear your mind and make you understand what you're getting yourself into and plan appropriately and avoid failure. Identify things that can lead you to failure and plan on how to address them. This will be very key in terms of how you can manage the risks related to your small business. It is also important to determine at the beginning if you are going to be running the business alone or you will need other people to come and assist you. And then you have to determine who are those people who will be willing to work with you in this very lonely journey. Who are the people that will have the patience to work for years, sometimes without generating income or making any profit, but having the belief that the business is going to succeed. Failure, it's something very important to look at, and that's why I've made this particular episode, because I have come to understand that failure is something that we don't want to talk about. And the book that I wrote primarily gives a lot of insight on the myriad of failures that I've encountered in running small businesses and the lessons that I've drawn from those particular failures. And this is the reason also that I've made this podcast, to share these failures with you and make sure that you avoid some of them and aim for success. Why do people not like failure? We generally as people feel that it is very bad to fail. Success is the thing that we celebrate, is the thing that we hold in high esteem. And if you happen to fail in this society, you get ostracized. So failure is shunned. But we forget that the people who succeed in most cases are the people that have failed many times. And in the process of failing, they then develop the formula that makes them successful entrepreneurs. We don't appreciate the value of failure. And immediately we hear that somebody has failed, we shun them away and we don't want to talk to them. But in my experience as a business person, I feel it is better for people to invest in someone who has failed before, somebody who has tasted failure, somebody who has developed the patience to handle failure. What are the causes of failure? Well, there's quite a lot of them. One of them is the understanding that we are all not entrepreneurs. There is no harm in being a very good, diligent employee. We need to understand that some of us are not born to be entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is quite a very difficult journey, and it requires a lot of commitment and patience in order to succeed. So there is a need of a lot of passion, patience, and determination to start a business and make it a success. The other thing that is very important in terms of failure is the issue of the 80-20 principle. It is said that most of the people in small businesses fail because they spend 80% of their time on things that do not generate any income, like admin or fruitless meetings, which are not very productive. Those things lead to the failure of the business, because then you are only left with 20% to invest in making the business productive. The other thing that is very important is the fear of failure. The fear of failure is crippling mentally. It leads to doubt and a low self-esteem. And once you develop that, the likelihood of you succeeding is quite very low in a world where there's already a lot of doubt on entrepreneurs and the success of business. The other thing also that is key is the challenge of working too hard but not being smart. This can lead to a lot of waste of resources, a waste of time, and not doing things that do not generate revenue for the business. Then the other challenge is the issue of divided attention. When you don't have a focus and you are all over the place chasing the wind and lacking patience, you are not likely to succeed. These are the things that lead to failure. Starting also the business with no strategic assessment of its potential to succeed is quite very dangerous, and it's a recipe for failure. It's very important that you make an honest assessment before you start the business and make a determination if there's more than 50% chance to succeed in your business in order to be able to invest your resources and manpower into it. One other thing that also leads to failure in business is the whole idea of going into starting a business out of desperation. Some people start a business because they're running away from conflict from work and or running away from debts, and they want to use a small business as a quick solution, and because of they are in distress. And unfortunately, it takes time for a business to grow and be able to give a good earning to the owner. And if you don't have the patience and you are distressed, you're not likely to stand the test of time and endure the pain of growing a small business to the point where you can succeed. Uh, the other thing also that is important is the ignorance of branding of a business. It is important to develop the brand from the start. Your logo, your website, look professional. Otherwise, people will never take you serious. In some businesses, when you start, you don't necessarily have the track record. For example, when you start in consulting, you may not have any record in the company that you have just started. But if you brand it appropriately, it will send a message that you are serious about yourself and you show that you prefer quality work. And in that way, people can entrust you with projects and they will believe that you will make a success of them. So, for example, I've also learned that in businesses such as consulting, when you start, all you have is the image in the beginning. So if you present a good professional image, you can attract some customers. And I have managed to do that with various small businesses that I've started in the consulting space by branding them appropriately from day one, putting in their resources, getting the best graphic designer, putting together a powerful website. That sends a very good message to potential clients. The thinking that a small business it can be some form of a lottery is quite very dangerous and is another recipe for failure. Small businesses take time to mature. It can take years before you can start reaping the rewards. So it's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not like some form of betting. You need to put in the hours and you need to do your projections and see when are you going to break even. What are the timelines? Are you going to be able to withstand those? Are you going to have the necessary resources to run for a year or two before you can break even and start making a profit? So the other challenge also that leads to failure is the issue of copying other people. People tend to rush into businesses because they've seen somebody succeed and they believe that they can just replicate that. We don't have the same calling. Even in entrepreneurship, I can be called to do very good businesses in consulting, but I may fail dismally if I try to be a farmer or an industrialist, manufacturing some goods. So you need to know what are you capable of and what are you gifted in. So rather do your own thing instead of copying other people, because you don't know what are their strengths and what are their support systems. The other issue that also leads to failure is the issue of negative competition, where you're trying to prove some people that you can do it. Uh, this leads to bad business conceptualization, because you are not doing the business in good spirit. You are not focusing on yourself. It's like you are driving your own car, but you have stuck out your head through the window looking elsewhere. You're not going to get your car anywhere because you are not driving yours. You are instead focusing on other people driving their own cars. So focus on your own talents, on your own gifts, and do your own thing. Don't do business to vindicate yourself or to show that you're capable. That's not the right spirit of doing business. So don't engage in negative competition. That is not productive. So the other thing also, if you fear to invest in your business, you will stifle it. A business needs resources and it also needs money. So if you starve it of liquidity, it may not go anywhere. Not because it doesn't have potential to succeed, but because you are not injecting the required amount of capital. The other thing that also leads to failure of small businesses is dishonesty to customers, to lenders, people who give you money, and also to partners, business partners. That is a recipe for failure. If you do not have customers, you don't have a business. The other challenge also, being all over the place. It's a recipe for challenges. And there's always an emphasis when you run a small business. People will always say, start, start, start. But there's a very minimal emphasis on the issue of saying, stay, stay, stay. No matter how difficult it becomes, after you have started, stay the course. No matter the winds of pain that will come, stay there, stick it in, and you'll see the results over time. Business is a game of patience. The rush for big money can be very problematic if you don't have the patience, because you'll also try to engage in fast growth, and that can lead to imminent collapse. By that I mean, I've seen some people who just open a business today and they want to get a tender worth 100 million rands or dollars, but they don't have the capability to run such a business. You're just a one-man show, or you're less than 5 people. You have never even run a project of 2 million or 3 million rands. You have to be very realistic of your capabilities, because going out there and sourcing work that you don't have the capability to deliver on will stifle you and will lead to imminent collapse, and your reputation will be tarnished and the business will not go anywhere. The other thing also that leads to failure is not using your strength. I've learned in the consulting businesses that I've started that I used my qualifications, the skills that I have as an environmentalist, to start environmental consultancies. And it was possible to make them successful because they were based on my brain power. And I could also draw on expertise around me, of people that I know. If I were to start a business, for example, in an area such as security, I may fail very dismally because I've got no clue on how a security company operates, and I've never worked as a security guard. So that limits the potential to succeed. The other issue is to set unrealistic targets. If you say you're going to generate 10 million on your first year of running your startup, it may be too much. And if you don't reach that particular target, you may get demoralized and stop. So be realistic. Rather work with, accountants as a sounding board who will do projections for you and show you how realistic you can become in terms of growing your business without setting unrealistic targets that can just kill your spirit in the long run. The other issue, which is a challenge, is the lack of support. Sadly, where I come from, also in the black communities, there's very minimal belief in business. The only thing that we are encouraged to do through education and the society we live in is to work, find a job, and retire. Work until you retire. If you start a business, it's against the norm. There are so many prophets of doom around. So those are the people that will just kill your spirit. So make sure that you hang around the right people to avoid that. The other thing also that can lead to failure is the lack of industry knowledge. Like I've said, if I was to start a company in the security industry or in the paint manufacturing industry, I will need to equip myself with knowledge, go to industry experts, and get mentors in order to succeed. Otherwise, I'm set for failure from the start. The other issue that fails us in the small businesses is the know-it-all attitude, which leads us to getting alienated by peers within the industry because they just start to realize that we believe we know, and that is very dangerous and it causes failure. Then, what can we do to avoid failure? There's quite a lot of things that we can do. The first important thing to do is to understand the value proposition of the small business that you have started. What is the unique value offering that you want to give in the form of goods and services to your customers? So just be clear about what you are bringing to the market, which is not available, which is unique, which will be appealing to new customers. Do not get driven by money alone. There's nothing wrong with aiming to make money in business, but it is very important to also make sure that you are driven by passion and determination. Because with passion and determination, you can achieve a lot with limited resources, that can take you very far. In order to aim for success, you can tap into your heritage for sustainable business ideas that are unique and innovative. And there you can look into things such as music, such as clothing, in terms of your culture. There's so many things that you can tap into, the knowledge around medicinal plants. You can start industries around those particular things without having to crack your head. It is not necessary to go very far from what we have in terms of knowledge. If you engage the old people where we come from, they've got so much knowledge we can tap into and create value and bring modern type of medicinal plants that can be used, which are organic, healthy, and they are not drugs. Just know that you can start your small business without an elaborate business plan, but it is good to have one. But do not stop from starting because you don't have any. You can start by just doing some basic thinking, putting some basic ideas on paper without really making it a formal business plan. You will adapt things as you move. The biggest thing that you need to do is to start and start imperfectly. If you wait for a perfect moment, you're not going to start. Do not get paralyzed by analysis. There's no perfect business from the start. You have to start slowly and build from scratch. I would want to continue by pointing out the issue of tenders in South Africa. The new South African government set out laws to try to create opportunities for disadvantaged communities, and in the form of tenders. So this has led to the emergence of a lot of small businesses that are solely reliant on tenders without thinking innovatively and coming up with unique, ideas that can be used to offer goods and services that are much needed by communities. Businesses that are based on tenders are not sustainable in the long run. And it's also important to note that, as once quoted by Bob Marley, do not allow a politician to grant you a favor. Most of the tenders are driven by politicians, and some people who happen to be very close to politicians get these tenders, and they get tied up for the rest of their lives. They have to pay these people. It doesn't matter if the tender is finished or not. You just become liable for life. So there's a danger there of being overly reliant on tenders. If you happen to get a tender, there's nothing bad about it, but just make sure that the resources you get start sustainable businesses that are not based on tenders. A tender is like a fly. It disappears with the night. Be careful also about corruption. It can harm your business and land you in jail, leaving you with no family, no home, and no money. It's very dangerous because in the space where we are in South Africa, in the past administrations that have been running the country, they made sure that corruption became very fashionable, and everybody, there's a stampede for people to become corrupt, and people are very proud about it, and they brag about the houses they have and the cars that they have. But there's always an imminent danger. Some of the people, as we speak, are in jail. Some are facing jail time. Some have to be in politics just to protect their skin for the rest of their lives. It's not a good life. Be very cautious when you engage in corrupt activities, because records are there. Over time, you may be found, and your children will come and see you through a small window. There's a danger. We need to avoid things like that, because corruption and greed lead to limitless demands. I would like to quote an African proverb which says that money is like seawater, it never quenches the thirst. So you must know you will never get enough money in life. Even the billionaires that we know of and the trillionaires, these all these people are still having nightmares, and the fear of losing their wealth keeps them awake at night. So ensure that you invest your resources cautiously to avoid failure, and make sure that there's liquidity in the business, but do not overinvest and waste money and buy things that are not needed. Let the business grow itself step by step. A business is like a baby. The baby will start from suckling, crawling, walking, and running, and then starting to talk. So you need to make sure the business grows step by step. The other thing also is avoid using your pension money to experiment with business. I think I could not emphasize this more than enough. I've seen people start businesses that collapse within a year or two, and all their pensions are finished. So you need to be sure what you are doing when you are retired. Don't go to experiment on business, because it can harm your life, destroy your family, and it can kill you prematurely, because you will be depressed, because you will have lost almost all the money that you have worked for many years. Look for business opportunities that are not capital intensive, especially as startups. If you're an intellectual, well qualified, you might as well look at businesses such as consulting, where you just need a laptop, you can operate from your own house, and you can write reports and go out to meet people in restaurants and consult. That is not capital intensive. And it's easier to do. And through those businesses, you can generate income and do more capital intensive types of businesses at a later stage. Take advantage of the government loans and grants, in particular the loans that are found from government institutions. For example, in South Africa, the Small Enterprise Fund and the IDC, those entities offer finance at lower interest, in particular targeting emerging Black entrepreneurs. Identify mentors that you can tap into their knowledge. They can assist you on a day-to-day basis so that you can make the right decisions, invest wisely, and avoid mistakes. Always upskill yourself, with relevant business, skills, related to your own industry. This can also be done by reading books, attending workshops, seminars, and talks. And a lot of online opportunities are there, and groups are there also online to engage in particular business activities. Be very careful about YouTube and social media business advice, because some of it is just gray literature. It's not really stuff that can assist you. You do need a mentor who can assist you, because sometimes it takes knowledge to identify good information from bad information. You cannot see it if you're not experienced enough. So you may end up experimenting with a lot of things that do not work and destroy yourself and your business. Avoid the situation of making yourself Mr. Everything or Mrs. Everything. Rather draw from other experts to assist you in your business. Experts such as your accountants, marketing and sales specialists, your lawyers, business development specialists who can come and enable you to grow your small business appropriately. You need to know your weaknesses from the start in business and bring people who can be able to complement you, who can fill up the gaps where you are not capable. It's very important. If you don't do that, you'll end up doing things you're not good at and mess up a lot, and that can compromise your business. It is also important, from my experience, that you multi-skill your employees. You can make sure that your employees can do more than one thing. I used to have employees that work in my construction business, but I trained them also to manufacture paint, meaning that the same employees can do more than one role. So in that way, will have fewer employees, and then that will help you to save costs. Always try and hire the best. I know this is very difficult in the beginning because you don't have the HR. Sometimes you don't have the skills in HR. So you just hire people by just talking to people. That's quite very dangerous. And I've learned from experience. Rather hire the best, maybe engage hiring agencies to assist you to identify the best people that can work in your business. Avoid desperate people, friends, relatives, and church people. It's not going to help you. They are just going to hang around, make you, when the business is dry, they are not even going to be there for you. They will forget you within a second. And do not hire people emotionally, because somebody is poor or they're desperate. You just feel like you must offer them a job. A small business is not a government. It cannot afford hangers on or the layabouts, people who just are there to make a living out of your business. I've done it in the past, just brought people emotionally, and I've never benefited. And whenever things were difficult on my side, they were standing up, across the fence and laughing at me. So rather not do that to avoid failure. So be careful also about the people that you bring into the business as partners. They must bring some value. Don't just bring anybody because you just want to have partners. You know, because I've learned from experience. I've brought people out of goodwill, and I'll realize later that they are there to just milk the business for their own selfish benefits. So be very careful. People will not build a big business even if you give them shareholding. They just want to earn a salary from the business, the business opportunities that you've created. When things run dry, they've got their own things running on the side. They just leave you. It is also very important that you must not tolerate unproductive partners. They hang us on. People, and employees too, they're quite very destructive because they just drain the business, and the resources that they take can be used for some other proper investment opportunities that can grow the small business. So be careful about the partners, that are also obsessed with money, with no passion in the business. They are quite very dangerous because those are the people that if you are sick or you're not capable of doing anything, if you leave them with access to money, you will not find the money there. So rather get people who are very much careful with money and they are trustworthy. In cases where you are struggling and you're in a hospital bed, the last thing you want to worry about is a business, and that never bring value. I've brought people that I thought were experienced, some of them working in big positions in government and other organizations, and I brought them into business, and I thought these are the people that can make the business grow to the point that I can do less. They can appreciate the value of me having started the business alone and getting, the jobs, or the projects that we were running that could make a living, they could make a living from. But I started to realize that those people become obsessed, and when you try to task them, they get very annoyed and they are not there for that. They just want to make sure that they benefit, they make enough money for themselves and their families, and they become such a terrible thing to have as partners. And we need to avoid such types of people because you need to determine the motive of the person when they join the business. Do they have the interest of the business at heart? Are you going to be able to fight sometimes and differ here and there? Are they going to stick around, or they are just big-headed and have big egos and they will just not want to listen to you at all because they come from places where they were worshipped, they had big offices, they got huge staff compliments, so they're not there to listen to anyone. And in a small business, you need everybody pulling together. You cannot afford the layabout, the people who are just hanging around to make sure that they milk the small resources that will be flowing into the business. So also make sure that you avoid, using business resources for charity. It's something that I've always struggled with. That is because I've got a very soft heart. And at some point in time, I was spending thousands per month assisting people. And I tried to avoid it, but I just couldn't stop it because somebody would just call me and say, I don't have food, or I don't have these resources, and I'll struggle not to do that. So I think it's good to do that, to assist people. There's nothing bad about it, but there must always be a limit because it will end up compromising your own business. And those people will not be there when you're broke and penniless and lonely. They are not going to be there. So rather set up a vehicle for charitable causes, for example, and fund really deserving people that you don't really have much relationship with, like your needy hospitals or shelters or giving clothes to the needy. Those are the things that I feel I have to focus on instead of just being used by friends and relatives as some form of, an ATM where the people can just come and get money whenever they want. So try to avoid that and do it appropriately in cases where you want to assist. Because, when things are bad, a friend of mine called Christian Konyenko always tells me that when things are very bad, only 5 people will care about you. And that is probably your very immediate people, and the rest will never care about you. People do not want to invest on a dying horse. So be careful. Don't misuse the resources of the business, and don't do undeserving charitable causes where you are just funding people who have just found a place where they can make money. The other thing also that I've learned, avoid franchises. I don't want to mention things by name, but I once bought a franchise, and then I learned the hard way and realized that the person who sold me the franchise literally was running a one-man show and had no resources, had not much knowledge in the industry, and we ran into a lot of conflicts. And he always tried to make as much money as possible from me, to the point when I was selling the franchise, he even tried to squeeze money out there without even having done much. I even had to do quite a lot of work in terms of the setup of the shop. Get my own people to paint because the quality of the work being done was so bad. So franchises are meant to benefit their owners. If possible, try and stay away from them. And if you buy any, just do a lot of due diligence and buy the right one, because you'll find yourself with a lot of challenges. Because some of the franchises really are just a name that you are buying, and there's not really much that you get out of them. They are very shocking if you do some serious analysis. Some of them, they're just selling your name, a desk, and a few old computers, and that's it. And then you will pay R500,000, which can set up an industry in places such as South Africa. Also, make sure that you avoid pricing things uncompetitively. Not knowing prices for the industry that you are in is a very serious disadvantage. So rather try to sometimes to befriend people who work in procurement in particular departments or organizations, so that they can guide you on how to price particular tenders. That's quite very important. And always remember that in business, we do not fail. Whatever loss that you make in business, it's fees that you're paying for the knowledge that you accumulate. So there's always value in the lessons that we learn, and they come with a lot of cost. It can be in the form of time and money. I love to quote what was written by Walter Isaacson in the book on Elon Musk. He said Elon Musk believes in failing fast and restarting again. These are some of the people who are top up there, but they really embrace failure, and they just learn a lot from failure and restart and keep on moving, and they get to be the best ultimately. So we have to learn from our failures and keep improving. That's quite very important in any small business. Focus is also quite very important. I'm just re-emphasizing it. So focus in one industry in the beginning, if possible, and diversify later when you're really stable financially, and the business that you are running can be able to carry another one which does not make money. So do not just take money and start another business from a business that is struggling. That doesn't, a whole litany of failures do not add up into a form of a success. So avoid that. And the other thing also, be very respectful to your clients, because without them, you don't have a business. And do not get entangled in fights that happen, at your client's offices. So rather stay away, provide the service, and if there are issues, stay away from those particular issues. And if possible, avoid legal fights with your clients and use legal fights as a last resort. Legal fights take time, tarnish reputations, and obviously, ultimately, when you get whatever you get out of the legal fight, no one will want to give you a job, because you become an enemy. Even if you didn't do anything wrong, you were just trying to fight for what you deserve, or to be paid for work you have done. The other thing also, do not be afraid to dream big. That's one limitation I've always had. I think having grown from very, humble beginnings, I've always been somebody who doesn't dream that much big. And I think it's quite very limiting. So do not be afraid to dream big, because small dreams can be very limiting. Make sure that you have relevant insurance. I can't emphasize this enough. Business can be very stressful, and at some point in time, you can be, affected by some sicknesses. So if you're insured, that will help you a lot, because you can be able to earn an income during the times where you cannot be able to work. So make sure that you've got a sickness and disability cover as you start to do your business, and pay it diligently over the years. It will serve you very well. But just make sure that the amount of money that you calculate to be something you can earn on a monthly basis can be something that um, you can be able to cover your living expenses. That is to pay for your house, to pay for your car, to pay for the fees for your children, and to make sure that you can pay your levies for your house, electricity and water and groceries. Uh, so insurances are very important also for the business itself, and for the factory, if you've got a factory, the raw materials and the vehicles themselves. So it's quite very important, because an accident, if you're not insured, and you've got a vehicle maybe that's worth 500,000, it can really kill your business if you end up paying a vehicle that is not there, or you lose it, and then you cannot be able to have a vehicle to do business with. So be careful about things that are very important to the business, and guard them with proper insurances. Share the success of your business with your employees. That is in the form of, shareholding, in the form of, bonuses, and a lot of other incentives that you can show a sense of appreciation. Ask employees for ideas in order to make sure that they feel that they are part of the business, and encourage them to learn more around the business so that they can be able to bring new ideas and grow the business. Create a powerful organizational culture. That is a culture where you you are grateful to your employees and you reward them appropriately. One other thing also that is very important is to have a cost-effective sales and marketing strategy. Uh, we normally neglect marketing and sales, and this is where our businesses fail, because we don't invest enough in resources. You must know that if you invest today, the likelihood of benefiting in your investment in marketing and sales is 6 months down the line, 12 months down the line. So if you don't invest in any form of marketing now, or any form of tendering now, you must know in 6 months or 12 months, there will be nothing coming your way. So make sure that you line up things properly so that you can have things on the pipeline. So you need a pipeline of new work that can be emerging, that can bring in revenue and profit into the business. The other thing also to avoid, is when your partners, husband and wife, do not leave your jobs at the same time. Rather, maybe one person can leave and the other one can work, as a way of managing the risk. That is, when more hands are needed and the business is doing well, that's when you can all join together and make the business a success. Also, make sure that you can involve your wife and children or husband to ensure that there is transfer of skills and we can make the business sustainable over generations. I would also want to note that, as much as I emphasize the issue of working with family in the form of wife or husband or children, uh, sometimes working with relatives may not necessarily be the best. So in cases where the people are not really cooperative and they are not focused on making good in the business, you need to avoid involving them because they can create problems in the form of taking advantage, and sometimes jealousy can also emanate. So where you don't have the right people next to you in the form of relatives or spouse or children, avoid and then just hire the best people who can come and push the business forward. It's also very important to avoid thinking that complicated businesses are the ones that are needed or are the ones that are going to succeed. The best business ideas out there are some of the simplest, and they tend to be money spinners. For example, just cooking food um, can, on the street, sometimes even under a tree with no overheads, can take you far. It can become a very serious money spinner. So don't crack your head sometimes. Just do things that you feel there's going to be a demand, and then you do them well, professionally, with care for the customer and love. So avoid going for the difficult, because you will fail. Um, Sometimes the simplest ideas are where the money is. Be also careful with the issue of entitlement from parents, siblings, and children. These are the people that can drain you. So avoid being abused by parents sometimes, because if you become successful and sometimes you're the only one in the family, they would want to make sure that they milk you, and they will use you to build houses for your siblings, to look after your siblings' children, and do everything for your family. But when you are down, you, your wife, and your children are the ones that are going to bear the brunt. No one will come to your rescue. So be very cautious about that. It's very important to involve youth in the business. They have the energy. But what I've also learned from the young people that I've worked with, they can be very destructive. They run too fast, sometimes just chasing the wind, and they limp from one failure to another, and quite very fast, without much patience. They can be very dangerous, and they tend to have the attitude that they know, because they read a few lines on the internet and a few things on YouTube, and then all of a sudden they take very shallow, simple ideas, and then they purport those ideas to be industry knowledge without really having any in-depth reading of the industry where the business is operating. They don't invest time in knowing more, about what they are doing, but they are very vocal about things they don't know, and they are very much strong-minded about things they have no experience in, and they think they know, and it's quite very dangerous working with them without much direction. So sometimes you might have to push them aside and get experienced people who can run the business and make it a success. Also avoid being a loner in business. Try and travel and go to countries or other places and learn new business ideas. Sometimes we don't need to invent new things. We just need to identify people to work with. So I always promote the issue which is raised by the Japanese saying called Shinrin Yoku. Shinrin meaning the forest and Yoku meaning bath. So I always say, don't be a loner. Don't be alone. Try to take time to bath your entrepreneurial spirit. And you do that by going to trade shows, to seminars, and rubbing shoulders with people in the space with you who have encountered failure, who are struggling as much as you do, that can be able to give you the positive energy that can spur you on towards success. So in that way, you connect with like-minded people. Stay away as much as possible from people who do not like business, and avoid people that discourage you. Those are many, especially in black communities here in South Africa. People hardly believe in business. Even the most educated, they believe that all you have to do is to work. Business is something that is not promoted at all. So as a black people, we have to depend on other people to create businesses, where we can get jobs, where we can buy our food and our clothes, and we make nothing for ourselves, not even pens or books that we use to write or read. So we become very lazy in terms of generating goods and services for the good of our own people. So stay away from people really who are the prophets of doom, who are just going to drag you down and tell you that you're not going to make it. It's not true. The possibility of you making it is 100%. You just have to put in the determination and the focus. And do not take advice from people who have never run a business. When you move around here, there's so many people who will give you all sorts of advice with no knowledge. That will destroy your business. The other issue that is very important is that you need to learn from others who have failed in business. People who have failed in business have got so much to share. They've got a lot to give. And these people, we must embrace them. Even if they don't become successful entrepreneurs, but the experience they've gathered through failure is worth, noting. It's worth learning from. It will save us a lot of time and resources. We won't waste a lot if we learn from them. So even if a person has failed, take time to sit down and hear their story. They've got a beautiful story to tell, and one that can be able to enrich your journey in business. Also know that most of the challenges and solutions in business are well documented. There's quite a lot. There's a reservoir of knowledge out there. So go out there and read to avoid failure, because knowledge is out there. Things you're encountering, a lot of people have passed through them, and you can learn from just reading, from other, from books that have been written by other people all over the world. To ensure that we succeed and avoid failure, one of the key things is to set business targets that are smart. By smart, I mean specific and measurable, meaning that we can measure these targets, and they must also be attainable or achievable, and realistic. There's no point in setting up targets that are not realistic, which are just a pie in the sky. They must also be time bound so that we can measure them over time. So it is quite very key to have smart targets. Lastly, it is important to note that in this world, we need more small business owners to address the myriad of problems that we have in the African continent. And those include poverty, unemployment, and inequality. We have a serious challenge where the economies in our countries are growing quite very slow, whilst our populations are growing at a level higher than our economies. And that is quite a serious danger, because we are going to end up with economic systems that are not able to meet the needs of the people. And ultimately, it will lead to social unrest, rioting, and destruction of property. So small businesses are needed. Government doesn't have the capability to create the jobs and to innovate in terms of goods and services. There is quite a lot of wastage, and we know very well, including in South Africa, with the issues of fruitless and wasteful expenditure going into the billions, and people milking government, with all sorts of corrupt schemes, which are just aimed at getting money, which is ultimately blown and used to buy big houses, big cars, and clothes from foreign, companies, creating a huge, deep dark hole for government. It is important to start well from the beginning, start the business and think it thoroughly in terms of, can it be able to address social issues, which is your poverty, your unemployment, your inequality? Can you also deal with economic issues, create, good income, make profits, help the government to grow the economy? And can it also address environmental issues, minimize the use of energy or use green energy, solar, and minimize the wastage of water or use of grey water and the use of waste in producing much needed goods. So if it's thought through not thoroughly, it can be very beneficial to people, the economy, and the planet. So a balance of people, planet, and people, prosperity is quite very important. We need to look into those issues of people, planet, and profit. So the other issue that is very important is to note quite very well in the beginning of the business and throughout the business that business is a very difficult journey, but it is very fulfilling if you stick to it and you stay the course and don't take it as a quick fix. And you must know that the rewards are always waiting for you on the other side of the mountain. What is important is having the right attitude, the drive, and the energy in order to work towards success. Failure in life and in business is inevitable, but we must know that we can always overcome failure. We are strong enough to work around failure, and failure is there for us to bring the much needed lessons that lay the foundation for the best characters in us, for the best business people in us. You get acknowledged for having run a successful business because you have managed to overcome failure after failure and still stay the course. So just know that failure is there to test your character and to build it, and at the same time to bring much needed experience, which will, elevate you to bigger heights in terms of into the journey of entrepreneurship. In closing, this is the Succeed in Business podcast. This podcast will bring the best in you. Failure is inspiration. Your success is within reach. Do not give up. And I thank you.